In this episode of Streets of Liverpool, we are taking a trip over the water to visit the Wirral Peninsula. But our route is under the water through the first Birkenhead Tunnel, now named Queensway. At the time it was opened, this was the biggest municipal project ever undertaken, and at just over 2 miles, it was the longest road tunnel in the world. This was a title it held until 1948, when a longer one was opened in Spain. The first tunnel under the River Mersey had been built to carry the Mersey Railway in 1886. However, by the 1920s, there was growing concerns about the long queues of traffic waiting to cross the Mersey on car ferries. After much debate, it was decided that a road tunnel should be built, and work started in 1925 to a design by Sir Basil Mott, who worked with Liverpool city engineer John Brodie. The tunnel entrances, the original toll booths and ventilation buildings were designed by Liverpool architect Herbert James Rouse. More than 1.2 million tonnes of rock, gravel and clay were excavated, and some of it was used to build Otterspool Promenade. Of the 1,700 men who worked on the tunnel during the 9 years of construction, 17 were killed. It cost a total of £8 million to build and was opened on the 18th of July 1934 by King George V, with a crowd of more than 200,000 at the opening ceremony. The tunnel is also a tourist attraction, with visitors paying just £6 for a behind-the-scenes look at the engineering masterpiece. The guided tour is not for the faint-hearted, since there are a lot of steps to climb, but the effort is rewarded with visits to the ventilation stations with their giant fans. There is also a detailed explanation of how the tunnel was constructed and a visit to the original tunnel control room. Average daily traffic through the tunnel currently stands at 35,000 vehicles, which equates to just under 12.8 million journeys per year. The tunnel sees us emerge close to the heart of Birkenhead. The name of the town probably comes from a description of a headland overgrown with birch, referring to a thicket of birch trees which grew on the headland overlooking Woodside. For decades, the main activity was at Birkenhead Priory, a small community of monks who operated a ferry taking passengers in tiny sailing boats across the Mersey to Liverpool. It was not until the 19th century that the town started to grow. Following it, the establishment of shipbuilding, which started in 1829, and this was the business that eventually became the famous Camel Laird shipyard. Hamilton Square was designed by Edinburgh architect James Gillespie Graham and has the greatest number of Grade 1 listed buildings in a single scheme, second only to Trafalgar Square. Glasgow-born William Laird gave the square its name as a tribute to his mother-in-law Mary Hamilton. Dominating the square is Birkenhead Town Hall, which was built as the headquarters of the former county borough of Birkenhead in 1887. Designed by local architect Christopher Ellison, the building was constructed using Scottish granite and sandstone. It holds a council chamber, offices, a concert hall and function rooms. The clock tower stands 200 feet high and has 4 faces. After the abolition of Birkenhead Council in 1974, the building continued to be used as offices until the early 1990s, and it was later refurbished for use as the Wirral Museum. Since that was closed in 2010, the future of the Grade 2 listed building has remained uncertain, as Wirral Council would like to sell it. Woodside Ferry has a booking hall that dates from 1864 that remained virtually unaltered until it was extensively refurbished from 1985, with many of the original timbers being replaced. But Woodside was not the original ferry. Much more ancient was the Monk's Ferry, half a mile up the river. And this is Birkenhead Priory, the home of those Benedictine monks and the oldest standing building on Merseyside. The remains of the priory, dedicated to St James the Great, are Grade 1 listed, and the site is scheduled as an ancient monument. The priory was founded around 1150 by Baron Hamon de Massey, and it was twice visited by Edward I, a token of its strategic importance. The site chosen was a wooded headland projecting into the Mersey and lying between the two inlets of Wallasey and Tranmere pools. The priory was neither large nor wealthy. There were never more than 16 monks there at one time, but it held other land in Cheshire and across the river in Lancashire. But the priory rose in importance in 1318, when the Black Monks, as they were known, because of the colour of their habits, were granted rights to operate a ferry by Edward II. This allowed them to build a house in what is now Water Street to store their corn. The house was also used by travellers for shelter and when the weather was too hostile for small sailing boats to cross the River Mersey. The Priory's chapter house remains a consecrated Anglican church, and there is a museum detailing the history of the site, which has undergone careful preservation work. The tower is now dedicated as a memorial to those who died with the loss of the submarine HMS Thetis. Birkenhead's first Member of Parliament, shipbuilder John Laird, is buried in the churchyard. We venture south beyond Birkenhead now, passing Camel Laird shipyard and along the New Ferry bypass. The Wirral takes its name from myrtle trees that were once common here. The name Wirral literally means myrtle corner, from the English word weir, meaning myrtle, and heel, a corner or slope. In the Domesday Book, the boundary of the Wirral Hundred is described as starting 2 arrow falls from Chester city walls. And this is Port Sunlight, a model village that is regarded by many as the jewel in Wirral's crown. Work on Port Sunlight began in 1888 after the Lever brothers bought the site to expand their soap-making business, which was then based in Warrington. The company bought 56 acres of land, a prime site between the river and a railway line. William Hesketh Lever, later Viscount Leverhulme, personally supervised planning the village and employed nearly 30 different architects. Between 1899 and 1914, 800 houses were built to house a population of 3,500. The garden village had allotments and public buildings, including the Lady Lever Art Gallery, a cottage hospital, schools, a concert hall, open-air swimming pool, a church and a temperance hotel. The cottage hospital, opened in 1907, was closed for many years but refurbished and reopened in 2008 as a luxurious Leverhulme hotel. In his time, Lever introduced welfare schemes and provided for the education and entertainment of his workforce, encouraging recreation and organisations which promoted art, literature, science and music. He regarded Port Sunlight as an exercise in profit sharing with his workers, and so he invested heavily in the village where they were housed. Until the 1980s, all residents of Port Sunlight were employees of Unilever and their families. During the decade, the houses were first sold privately. One of the great buildings he bestowed on Port Sunlight is the Lady Lever Art Gallery, which he dedicated to the memory of his wife Elizabeth. A keen art collector, Lever travelled all over the world and wanted to share with his villagers and others the art he had collected. Opened in 1922 by Princess Beatrice, the art gallery shows Lever's collection of artwork, including a range of furniture, paintings, sculptures and ceramics. Today the gallery is operated by National Museums Liverpool. It regularly hosts special exhibitions by artists, including the likes of Turner, Sickert and Picasso, which draw visitors from all over the UK to Port Sunlight. A new addition to Port Sunlight is River Park. Merseyside's newest public park, it opened in 2014 on the banks of the River Mersey. River Park is an open natural space that has been created on the former landfill site at Bromborough Docks. The site was taken over by the Land Trust, a charity that is committed to the long-term, sustainable management of open space for community benefit. There are an array of walkways, wildflowers, wildlife and a wetland area for visitors to enjoy. It is picturesque in all seasons. Join us in part 2 when we look at a site that provides a vital service for tens of thousands of viewers of Made in Liverpool and wonder why Birkenhead is twinned with a new town in Italy, but not with the Big Apple. Bromborough has its own potential claim to fame, as the site of one of the bloodiest battles fought in the Middle Ages. It is said that Bromborough was the site of the Battle of Brunanburg, when thousands died in clashes between Saxons and the Celts. The battle in 937 say that Saxon King Ælfthastan was the victor. It is said the battlefield could have been on the plain before Staunton Hill. But for many Liverpool viewers in parts of Liverpool and the Wirral, Staunton is important today for a different reason. It is the site for the Staunton relay mast, which beams the TV signal on tens of thousands of homes on Freeview. Heading north again, now we head towards the ancient village of Oxton. Another place mentioned in the Domesday Book, it is today a conservation area. Skirting Oxton, we enter Ball's Road. Interestingly named after Mr. James Ball, who lived in a house on the corner of nearby Palm Hill. Mr. Ball owned ferry boats that ran between Liverpool and Monk's Ferry. To distinguish his boat from many others, he had a large ball fitted to the tops of their masts. And in Ball's Road, we find the Williamson Art Gallery and Museum. Opened in 1928, it was named after its benefactors. It's a single-storey classical building, mainly in red brick, with Corinthian columns and pilasters. It is not in the town centre, but in Oxton, and therefore convenient for the middle-class audience for which it was intended at the time. It is rather an unassuming building, but it contains 14 galleries and was designed without windows to maximise display space, with discreet top lighting. It was advanced at the time it was built for the system of humidifiers in the galleries, which protect the works of art. The building was intended primarily as an art gallery, with the hope that money would later become available to extend and provide the museum more display space. The collections shown today include Oriental ceramics, West African wood carvings, Irish glass, and Cretan antiquities. Perhaps the most important works are connected directly to the Merseyside area. Local ceramics include a collection of Liverpool porcelain from the second half of the 18th century and the Della Robbia pottery. There is also the Maritime Gallery, opened in 1963, which brought models, pictures and artefacts from shipping lines and the Mersey ferries, along with a collection drawn from camel lairds. This area on the edges of Oxton and Claughton in the late 19th century was a site of great mansions, like Claughton Manor House. Built in about 1850 by local benefactor Sir William Jackson, with its gardens designed by Sir Joseph Paxton, it occupied a site between Egerton Road and Manor Hill until it was pulled down in the 1930s. One of the few surviving examples of these great mansions is Outwood. This building was for decades the residence of the Congregation of the Christian Brothers, the Roman Catholic teaching order established and ran St Anselm's College. The brothers purchased the house when it came on the market in 1933 and built their school in the extensive grounds. Outwood was built in 1863 by the Halsall Sedger, a prominent Liverpool corn merchant. The Sedgers, however, lived in the house for only 5 years, moving out because of Halsall's failing health. It was bought in 1872 by Joshua Heap, a rice and sugar merchant. Heap's Rice Hill warehouse still stands in Upper Parnell Street, Liverpool, where it's been converted into apartments. Many of the existing fine features of Outwood have been left intact during the brothers' occupation. After they left Outwood, it was bought by St Anselm's College Edmund Rice Trust and has been the subject of sensitive restoration, which is partly complete. Outwood House is now used to accommodate part of the sixth form at St Anselm's College, along with the college library and a small chapel. Birkenhead is twinned with the town of Latina in Italy, a new town built by Mussolini south of Rome. Perhaps Wirral might also think of twinning with New York. Not such a ridiculous idea, since it is said that Manhattan's famous Central Park was inspired by its predecessor in Birkenhead. In 1841, an improvement commission, part of Birkenhead's local government, proposed the idea of a municipal park. A private Act of Parliament allowed it to use public money to buy 226 acres of marshy grazing land on the western edge of Birkenhead. Plots of land on the edge of the proposed park were then sold off in order to finance its construction. Although some large houses and private villas were initially built by local merchants and wealthier business people, The long depression in the latter 19th century would mean that many plots remained undeveloped well into the early 20th century. The Improvement Commission chose Joseph Paxton to design the park and Edward Kemp as the works supervisor, because both had previously worked on redesigning the gardens at Chatsworth House. The park, which took 5 years to build, was designed to be natural and informal, rather than a structured, neatly arranged urban garden. During construction, hundreds of tons of stone and earth was moved to create well-drained terraces, hills, rockeries and lakes. Paxton planted numerous trees and shrubs at various places, so visitors would enjoy the surprise of unexpected views or hidden features as they wander through the park. Buildings included the Swiss Bridge, a 23-foot pedestrian span built in 1847. It is unique as being the only covered bridge of traditional wooden construction in the United Kingdom. The grand entrance was built to look like a classical triumphal arch. As many as 10,000 people attended the official opening in 1847. The park became run down and neglected towards the end of the 20th century. Beginning in the late 2000s, it has undergone major restoration work. A purpose-built visitors centre has been installed, and there's been work done to restore its original buildings and bridges, as well as tidy up the lakes and parklands and unblock the drainage system. In 1850, American landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted arrived by ship in Liverpool. During his stay in northwest England, he paid a visit to Birkenhead Park along with several other public gardens. In 1858, Olmsted won competition to design Central Park in New York and said he was influenced by the Paxton designs in Birkenhead. The park was designated a conservation area in 1977 and declared a Grade 1 listed landscape by English Heritage in 1995. Less inspiring architecturally is Birkenhead Market, which is at the centre of the town in the Grange shopping centre. Struggling to compete with changing shopping habits and out-of-town developments, there are draft proposals for reinventing the market for the modern area as a specialist destination. Birkenhead's original market was opened on what is now the site of the town hall on the 10th of July 1835. The land was donated by Francis Price and the building cost £4,400. The market was adequate for the town's then population of 2,569. But by 1841, the population had seen a dramatic growth to 8,223, necessitating the opening of another market on the 11th of July 1845. The council paid £8,154 for the land, with a further £23,000 being spent on what was then Europe's second largest market, St John's in Liverpool being the biggest. Michael Marks of Marks & Spencer opened one of his first 7-penny bazaar stalls here during the 1880s. Both splendid buildings, supposedly fireproof, came to the same end. The Crystal Palace caught fire in 1936 and Birkenhead Market first in 1969, then again on the 9th of November 1974. Birkenhead Market still boasts over 300 indoor and outdoor stalls, including 2 nationally acclaimed fishmongers. The movement of the old market clock, which was destroyed in the 1974 fire, was salvaged and is now the centrepiece of the new market, starting up again 157 years to the day after it first kept time. Join us again next time on Streets of Liverpool, when we go on a wide-ranging tour of the city and delve into the history of its roads and find out where they got their names.